Good evening, and thank you for taking time out to view this presentation on financial aid. My name is Brenda Jackson, and I am the GRASP advisor at J.R. Tucker. Some of you might be saying, GRASP advisor? What is that? Well, I will tell you about it before the end of this presentation. This presentation is broken into two parts. First, I will talk about the basics of financial aid, and then I will speak to the services of a GRASP advisor to help make the journey of finding aid less stressful to you and your family. So what is financial aid? Financial aid is money for education expenses for either college or a career school. And this aid consists of grants, which you do not have to repay. They are sometimes called gift aid. Work study, that is money that a student will earn with a job, often on campus, and this helps the student pay his or her education expenses. This money does not have to be repaid. You do with it what you want to. Loans. Now, loans will have to be repaid with interest, and we encourage students to be very careful about making loans because you will have to pay for them, but to also look at them as an investment in your education. Now, scholarships, they are funds that do not have to be repaid as well. And scholarships are usually based on academic merit, but can be based on a student's interest, hobbies, religion, ethnicity, and or financial need. A lot of students think that scholarships, when they hear about it, they think about the academic scholarship, which is how you are academically gifted, or maybe an athletic scholarship, how well you are in your athletic prowess. If you're good at any particular sport at school. But there are also scholarships that can be given for your interests. Again, as I say, your religion, your ethnicity, or a hobby that you might even have. How do I get this financial aid, you might ask? Well, to receive financial aid, students must first apply by completing the free application for federal student aid, sometimes often called FAFSA. You will hear that name quite a bit. And this application can be found at fafsa.gov. Who can get financial student aid? Basic eligibility criteria for federal student aid consist of the student must have a demonstrated financial need. They must be a U.S. citizen, national or eligible citizen, such as a permanent resident. And there are additional categories of eligible non-citizenship. They must have a high school diploma or the recognized equivalent of a GED certificate, a state certificate, or someone who has been homeschooled and has completed his or her homeschool education as recognized by the state of Virginia. The student must be enrolled as a regular student in a degree or certificate program that is eligible to be paid for by the federal student aid funds. And males must register for selective service within 30 days of their 18th birthday. So who can give other kinds of financial aid? So financial aid can also come from the state, the colleges, the school to where the student plans to go to. And then there's tons of private scholarships out there. But they all have some type of eligibility criteria. So you must be very careful to know what you need to do to actually qualify. How much federal aid? How much federal student aid can a student get? In general, depends on the financial need. Financial need is determined by what we call the expected family contribution, the EFC, which is a formula that takes into account information such as the student's and the parent's income, and often some of their assets. How many people are in the family household, and how many of those people are in college? EFC comes from what you report on your FAFSA form. The cost of attendance, which includes fees, room and board, and transportation. And under that headline, it would include such things as tuition and fees, books, supplies, transportation, dependent care, disability expenses, employment expenses for co-op study, and loan fees, all tied up in cost of attendance. Financial need is determined by subtracting the EFC from the COA. COA meaning cost of attendance. Because cost of attendance differs from school to school, a student's financial need will also differ from school to school. How much federal student aid can a student get? The maximum awards listed on this slide are just that, maximum awards. There is no guarantee that any single student will receive the maximum award. As of today, for the Pell Grant, the maximum award is $6,345 if they are financially in need. And remember, when I use the word grant, we mean that this is funds that do not have to be paid back. The federal work study depends on the funds that are available at the school. The school will find you a job, either on campus or somewhere close to campus. You are working part-time because you're going to be a full-time student. This is your money. You do with it whatever you want to do with it. Then there's the opportunity to borrow money, direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. For a freshman entering into college, the max amount of money a student can borrow is $5,500 for that freshman year. It does go up for the sophomore and junior and senior year, the amount of money that you can borrow. The question here is, I want you to be mindful of, is these loans. The ideal loan to get is a subsidized loan versus an unsubsidized loan. And why is that? Well, a subsidized loan will allow the student, and the student can borrow money. They're not paying taxes, but you can borrow money with that subsidized loan. As long as you're in school, you are not bound to start paying it back, and interest does not start accruing on that loan until you've either have left school or graduated, and 6 to 9 months after that. Then at that point is when you're expected to start making payments on that loan. The unsubsidized loan is structured a little bit differently. With the unsubsidized loan, students with their interest on that particular loan, that interest begins to accrue right away. So unsubsidized loan is the subsidized loan is the one you want to look at, because that interest is kept at bay for the number of years that you are still in school. Then there is the direct plus loan, and this is for parents, and this loan is minus the cost of attendance. So how much state, school, and private scholarship money can a student get? That again depends on the program. Do your research by all means. Ask the College Financial Aid Office for information about aid available at the school you intend to go to. Free scholarship search, GRASS, at grassforva.org. We have a huge database of scholarships that students can apply for. And then we have our own group of scholarships that GRASS offers to students. And then I might also ask that whatever school your student is going to, the counseling department will have someone that's in charge of keeping tabs on the scholarships that are available for the students at their particular school. So you might want to search out that person. And I think it's usually probably presented in a biweekly or maybe even weekly newsletter that comes out to the students. And it usually targets those, the local merchants and vendors within the Commonwealth of Virginia that are offering students these particular scholarships. I might add that at the J.R. Tucker High School, the counselor, Miss Smith, she puts out something called Schoology, which is that newsletter, which lists those particular scholarships that students can apply for. And I'm almost certain at whatever school your student is going to, something in that nature is available for them as well. So how do I apply for federal aid? The big question. I mentioned before, you must go to FAFSA.gov, which is where the application sits at. This application, I might also mention, is free. You do not have to pay for it. If you run across any entity that is offering to fill out your FAFSA for free, I would caution you in dealing with that particular entity. There's plenty of free information out there that can help you through this process. For school aid, you want to contact the federal aid offices at the schools you are considering. And for scholarships, you want to visit scholarships websites or call contact number for information. Again, how do I apply for federal student aid? First of all, ideally, you want to create something called an FSA ID, and that consists of a username and a password. Students and parents can create an FSA ID at any time. So you don't have to wait until, say, October or November to get started on this. You can get started by creating your FSA ID right now. And one of the benefits of creating your FSA ID is that you will be able to use it to sign the FAFSA form electronically. This will speed up the process greatly. I think I didn't mention to you that the application, well, by it being .gov, is online. And when you choose to fill out the application in that format, it just makes the process quicker. There are paper copies of the FAFSA application, but it takes a longer time for that particular paper process to happen for the student. Important to note that here that student and parent will need to complete separate FSA IDs, one for the student and one for the parent. Only one parent, if it's a two-parent household, only one parent needs an FSA ID, even if both parents' info will be provided on the FAFSA form. I would also encourage students when they're creating the FSA ID that you do not, make sure you get your birthday correct, as well as your social security number. Do not transpose any numbers because that information is verified through the Department of Education. And once it's submitted, they check to make sure you are who you say you are based on the information you put in the form. It is strongly encouraged that you provide an email address and a mobile number when you create your FSA ID. This will help if you forget your username or password and you need to reset it. It's important to understand that your email address and phone number can be used for only one FSA ID. And fsaid.ed.gov is the website that you would go to get started to create your ID. And don't tell anyone your FSA ID. It is not to be shared. Again, the application sits at FAFSA.gov and it's available online in English and in Spanish. And for the upcoming academic year for 22-23, when a student will be going to college, it opens up October the 1st of this year. Now, there are some state deadlines for FAFSA, and there are some school deadlines for FAFSA. I encourage students, as most of the GRASP advisors do, and we know that students are eager to complete their application, but complete your FAFSA first. Get that behind you. And that way your information is sitting right there in the schools that you choose to go to. It's sitting right there in the financial aid office and just waiting for you to be accepted by the school. Applying in October and the senior year, when the student is planning to go on to college in the fall, is ideal, and that's when the application opens up. Many state education agencies and schools also use information from the FAFSA form in order to determine eligibility for their programs and eligibility for scholarships that they might offer you. Again, their deadlines can be quite early, so the student should check the FAFSA site for the state deadline, as well as finding out each state's deadline as well. And I mention this because some states have an earlier deadline that their FAFSA has to be in versus some other states like Maryland or North Carolina or South Carolina. So you need to check and make sure that you have your FAFSA in before those deadlines. Using the FSA ID will help to pre-fill some information in the form, because you've already given some information when you created your FAFSA, and will automatically sign the form for the student. And it tends to help avoid problems caused if the student enters information that is different than what's on the ID that was created. Again, how do I apply for federal student aid? Watch for response by email or by mail confirming that your FAFSA form was processed. This is very, very important. I find that when I help students to complete their FAFSA, and I tell them to watch for an email within a couple of days after you've successfully submitted your FAFSA, you will get something by email from the Department of Education. It's called the Student Aid Report. On that student aid report will be listed your EFC number, okay? And it will also include a summary of everything that you have put into your FAFSA. So you want to double check it to make sure everything is correct. If you need to make some corrections or you need to add another school, you can go back in and make those corrections and add information that you may have intended to add before. Those corrections can be made online at FAFSA.gov or on a paper SAR, the Student Aid Report. Online corrections can be processed immediately in some cases, and the student will then receive a new SAR, Student Aid Report, and the school will receive updated information. Watch for emails or letters from the schools you are considering. Give the schools any additional paperwork that they will ask for, and do by all means meet all deadlines or you could miss out on aid. Don't procrastinate, put it off. You say you find that the school is asking you for some additional information. Don't put that responsibility off. Just jump right in there, and because you don't want to miss any kind of deadlines. A school might ask for additional paperwork, either to verify information on the FAFSA or to submit an application for financial aid from the school's fund. If you fill out the FAFSA form in February, before applying for admission to a college, it might be a while before you hear back from the school with a financial aid offer. The school isn't going to look at your FAFSA information until after you have applied to the school and they are ready to accept you, okay? So that information is sitting there in the financial aid office. They're just sitting there waiting for the school will have sent you a letter to say that you've been accepted, and they sent a notice to the financial aid department to say, okay, we've accepted this particular school. Let's create for them what we call an award letter. Just keep in mind, it is okay to submit the FAFSA form before you apply for admission. What happens next? Ideally, a student should find a school that will best suit his or her educational and training needs, as well as fitting his or her personality. If two or more schools are tied, then cost can be a determining factor. I have found that students, if they find a school that is a good fit for them, they tend to do a whole lot better than a school that that looks like it's going to be a party school, or they went there because their friends are going there. The school really has to be a good fit for you in order for it to work out well. We try to remind students that many relatively expensive schools have enough funds available to help out students with great financial need. Therefore, a school with a tuition of $50,000 to $70,000 a year might end up being more affordable due to the amount of financial aid it provides to the student than a school of, say, $25,000 a year. In other words, students should go ahead and apply to any schools that they truly believe are a good match for them, and then go ahead and try to figure out the financial aspects later. So when you start to evaluate the cost of attendance to schools, typically your private schools are going to cost you more than your state schools. And that might, when you see that number, you might say, oh God, this is just too much. My family, we cannot afford that. If that school wants you, if they really want you. Academically, they see that you are a good fit for their school, they will offer you a lot of aid money to get you to come to their school. In fact, if you chose to go that route, you may eventually pay less to go to that private school than to go to that state school. State schools do not have an awful lot of money to offer students. They do have money, but not as much as your private schools. But then again, I caution you again, it should be a good fit for you, where you're going to excel in your classes. Okay, so that kind of ends my part or discussion about financial aid. And it was just like Financial Aid 101. I tried to give you the basics of what financial aid entails. Uh, Importantly, starting your FSA ID early on, get that behind you, and then come October the 1st, uh, go online and begin to complete your FAFSA application. What a student can get by completing the financial aid application, we can get the grants, that Pell Grant, which is $6,345 for students who are starting as freshmen this year. This is what they will get. They can get scholarship money, and if need be, they can get a loan, but only borrow what you absolutely need. So now I'd just like to kind of spend just a few minutes on talking about GRASS, the organization that I work for, and several other advisors work for as well. I think right now we're in about 80 schools, 80 high schools, and a couple of middle schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So we're very well spread out. We're not so much up in Northern Virginia, but in Central Virginia and the East and the West and the South of the state, we're very much there. We are a post-secondary financial aid, early access college organization. And our main purpose is to help students and their families to try to figure out this process of financial aid. And because it can be kind of daunting, and we're here to help make it the road a little bit smoother for you. So again, what is GRASS? We are actually, let's see, let me go back. I am so sorry here. Let me see if I can go back. Okay. So we are a nonprofit, a 501c3. It just wants to advance for me. I'm sorry about that. Um, and we are funded by donations from individuals, businesses, and actually the state of Virginia. And there is a GRASP advisor like myself, positioned in about 88 schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We also work with students that have a disability, and we are very good in granting scholarships to deserving students. Like I mentioned earlier, we have our own scholarships that we hand out every single year to students. We are actually made up of advisors, donors, students, the various schools that we service, and parents, and a board of directors. Okay. Appointments to see a GRASP advisor is made through the counseling department. Our services are free and confidential, and most of our referrals do come from the wonderful counseling department. But students, please don't hesitate to tell your peers about our services, especially if you have had a rewarding experience with one of our advisors. Our biggest focus is assisting students with the completion of the FAFSA, and that is the free application for federal student aid, and information about scholarships. Our Last Dollar and Community College Pathways are two of our biggest scholarships that we hand out to students at the schools that we are positioned at. So in the age of COVID, we, like many others, needed to pivot our engagement with students and parents by contacting students through means of phone calls, text messages, emails, and video conferencing or video meetings. So this slide here actually lists the advisors that we have in Henrico County. The school is on, would be on your right side, and I'm sorry, on your left side. The advisor name would be beside it, and the day and the hours that that advisor is at that particular school. The last column actually is the telephone number for the school. So if anyone is interested in obtaining this information from this presentation and contacting any one of our advisors, this would be a helpful page for you. Lastly, this is how students at Tucker contact me. I see students through virtual appointments on Tuesdays from 12 to 3 and Wednesdays from 9 to 3. And I will say this, just because if you don't go to Tucker, I will see you anyway, anyhow, anyway, on any one of those days with a scheduled appointment. You will schedule your appointment through the website that we have listed here today, and or a student can send me an email at jrtucker@grassforva.org. So I hope I've given you something to think about, and there's something to kind of get started with and preparing and looking at what you need to do if you have a student that's preparing to go to college next year, or even this year, really. Um, it can be made affordable for you. You just have to know where to go and who to talk to, and we're out here to help you free of charge. So please don't hesitate to make use of our services. Thank you, and I will take any questions or concerns that you might have. And thank you for your time and attention.